The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Going back to the idea of portfolio construction, can you go over the Rodman story and the George Lucas story? Because I think that paints such a perfect picture as to why that thinking about the portfolio construction should be a higher priority than just trying to figure out if asset XYZ is going to go up or down in price.
George, the Rodman story, to talk about this, and it dovetails very well into a new paper that we have coming out.
Yeah.
It should be next week on our website. It's a little bit more of a technical paper, and actually this paper is going to include Python code and that enables people to play with some of these tools. We're actually introducing a new tool. But I imagine you're familiar with the concept of Moneyball. Right?
Yeah, the movie, right?
The movie and the Michael Lewis book.
Okay, yeah.
To recap that at the end of the day, Michael Lewis talked about how the Oakland A's had a very small payroll, and they couldn't compete in a league where there was really no salary cap with these big market teams like the Yankees that could go out and just buy any player.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is they had to think creatively, and they looked at statistics and they said, well, what statistics correlate highest with winning? We don't really care about the player, we care about winning. And so they figured out that statistics like on-base percentage and slugging percentage actually had a much higher correlation with winning than statistics like RBIs and steals. So the market was paying these huge premiums for RBIs and ignoring people who would bunt the ball to get onto first base, even though like on-base percentage was much more effective. Well, the entire asset management industry has the same problem. And this is the problem. Paul DePodesta, who was the assistant general manager of the A's at the time, had this incredible quote. I don't know if he actually said it or they just wrote it in the movie. But the quote is that the problem is that ball clubs think they are buying players. You don't want to buy players. Your goal is to buy wins.
Right.
The problem with the asset management industry, this includes everything from institutional pension funds to small investors. Everyone is focused on buying high-performing stocks or high-performing hedge funds, and people don't think in terms of buying portfolio wins, how to make a better portfolio.
Right.
You're not buying assets, you're buying a better portfolio. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? Well, the number one metric that people use to evaluate hedge fund managers, for example, in the asset management industry is something called the Sharpe Ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of your viewers might be aware of this. The question at the end of the day is, what is your performance given volatility? What's your performance given volatility? Well, the problem is that lots of high Sharpe Ratio assets can be put together and your portfolio gets worse. How funny. You go out and you select all of these assets that have really, really good high returns and high Sharpe ratios, and your portfolio is actually worse off.
Yeah. You buy 5 Michael Jordans, but you lose every game.
Yes, yeah. Well, I would say if you had 5 Michael Jordans, you'd probably do okay.
Or you won't win as many championships. Let's just put it that way.
The problem is that you probably can't buy 5 Michael Jordans. You probably can buy 5 slightly above average offensive players.
Right.
And then you end up not being that good of a team. So we all know this from sports. We totally understand this from sports. Because I think anyone who's a fan of a sports team will, your favorite team goes out and buys some high-priced free agent who's got these gaudy scoring numbers. And then all of a sudden you add that player to the team, and the team gets worse.
All right.
Why is that? Well, the player maybe is not playing defense. The player maybe doesn't pass the ball, uses the ball too much. There's a whole variety of these other reasons. So just evaluating a player based on scoring average is not very effective to understand how the player affects the total team. It's no different with an asset to the portfolio. It's no different from an asset to the portfolio dynamic. So like in sports, one of the examples, the Rodman example is wonderful in this way. Dennis Rodman is the lowest scoring inductee in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Right.
I'm going to talk, you talk about Dennis Rodman, a lot of people will have, these ideas about the guy. David Madonna and Kim Jong-un, and all this. There's a lot of emotions about Rodman. But I'm talking about Rodman as a basketball player. I'm not focusing on anything external. This is Rodman and what Rodman did on the court. So Rodman is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He won multiple championships and was on some of the best teams and the best team in NBA history. Yet he couldn't score. The guy couldn't score at all. In fact, he was so bad at scoring that no one would even guard him.
Right.
No one would even guard him. The guy could barely hit a shot outside of 5 feet. Yet something bizarre happened when you put Rodman on the floor. When you put Rodman on the floor, the team's offensive efficiency shot through the roof. Your team got so much better. You could put Rodman on a team of mediocre scorers, and that team became a playoff team and a finals contender. If you put Rodman on a team of really good scorers, like the Chicago Bulls, which had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, that team went from a very good team to the best team of all time.
Right. Right.
What was Rodman doing? He was a second round pick, overlooked. The Chicago Bulls got him for barely anything. They didn't have to trade. I think they traded Will Perdue for him. I mean, with respect to Will Perdue, this was so. What did teams not see about Dennis Rodman? Well, Rodman did one thing and one thing really damn well.
Rebounded.
He rebounded the basketball. If someone missed a shot, Rodman would go up and get the rebound. Rodman was so good at rebounding that he was 6 standard deviations better than the average rebounder in the league. So let's imagine this. Even though Rodman didn't score, if you missed a shot, Rodman would get the rebound. He would give you a second chance opportunity to score. Sometimes he'd give you a third or fourth chance opportunity to score. Now let's talk about this. Michael Jordan misses a shot in the fourth quarter. Everyone's human, even Michael Jordan. Misses a shot in the fourth quarter. Rodman gets the rebound. Is Michael Jordan going to miss a second shot and a third shot?
Right.
Not. So what happened is that even though Rodman couldn't score, you put him on a team and the wins over replacement value shot through the roof. He would contribute to team winning. He would increase the offensive efficiency of the team. So in this sense, Rodman is like an anti-correlated asset. He's an asset that actually, like in investing, for example, you can have these assets that have very gaudy scoring numbers. They look really good on paper. You have long track records of success. But the problem is that when you're entering into a period of inflation or deflation, these assets underperform. You have different assets that don't really look very good on paper. You look at them and you say, why would I ever invest in that? In fact, it might have a 0% return or even a negative return. You say to yourself, why would I even want that? But those assets make money in either the big deflationary events or the big inflationary events.
Right.
Those assets are like Dennis Rodman. And when you put them into your portfolio with other assets that make money during growth periods, they all balance out and make a better team. So the secret to the Dragon portfolio is we've highlighted investments. The Dragon portfolio, to go back to this concept, is a team. It's a team of players that work together where the sum is greater than the parts.
Yeah, right.
There are 5 components to that, as you've covered, but we'll review it. And they're approximately roughly equally weighted. The first component is like largely equity-linked assets. So like stocks. These assets go up with the business cycle. They crash when markets crash. The other asset is fixed income. That's the typical asset mix that most people have. The 3 other assets are assets that profit when those other 2 assets are suffering. Long volatility is like Dennis Rodman. When markets are crashing, long vol does really, really well. It doesn't look great on paper, but it does really well when markets are crashing. Commodity trend does really, really well in stagflation and inflation. And gold, obviously, also does very, very well during periods of stagflation. Gold went up 800% in the 70s. All these assets together, the sum is greater than the parts. So you wouldn't want a team of Rodmans, but you put Rodman with these other scorers, and the sum is greater than the parts. And the problem with our entire industry, the entire asset management industry, is that it's not measuring these effects. Professional sports, they're on it. These general managers get it. They have things like wins above replacement value for players and advanced plus minus statistics. They understand. They understand this. They've gotten burned so many times. But the investment industry is still stuck measuring the player and not the portfolio. They're measuring the assets and not the total portfolio.
That reminds me of a chart that you've got on your website, Chris, where you highlight what most people would consider a diversified portfolio. And I mean, I can't list it right off the top of my head, but I mean, you've got like 20 different things in there. And anyone looking at that would say, wow, that's really diversified. And then you have a pie chart right next to it that shows what percentage of that portfolio is short volatility. And it's like 95%. Can you explain that to the viewers so they understand that concept?
Yeah, the concept at the end of the day is that I have this phrase I've said for almost a decade now. We're all volatility traders. It's just whether we realize it or not.
Right.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that if you just stopped looking at assets in terms of artificial descriptions about what they are, like a 60-40 portfolio diversifies based on assets, right? Some more advanced portfolios diversify based on rolling correlations or vol. Well, the truth is that that's irrelevant. What you actually care about is how those assets perform in different environments. That's all that really matters. And a lot of assets only perform during a period of growth and stability. And that's what I refer to as short volatility. It's not necessarily a bad thing. They only perform during periods where markets are stable and there's steady growth. And during periods like March, they're losing money, or during periods like the 1970s stagflation, they're losing money after inflation. So these are what I would call short volatility assets. They're long GDP and they're based on the expectation of stability.
Right.
Long vol assets perform during periods of change. They make money during periods of change. That change could be default and market crashing, like in March, or it could be inflation, but they perform during periods of change. Well, most people think they have this diversified portfolio of all these different asset classes. But the problem is that when you enter into deflation or stagflation, all of those asset classes are underperforming all at the same time.
Right.
And they're just accentuating the same drawdowns. So like what you've got is an entire team of scorers with no one playing defense and no one rebounding the basketball.